GSR Radio is the perfect place for the family.
Well,
and welcome again, Bishop Harris.
So glad to be back with the family in the Bahamas and in America, of course.
Thank you. You know, you did such a great job last week. We could not but have you back to complete the work. Let us welcome my co-host, Bishop Arnold Josie. Good to have you back on board.
Hey, man, it's just so good to be back. I enjoyed you in my absence. I don't know, you tried to carry on without me. Don't be trying that, brother. Let's let it go. But Doug did such an excellent job sharing with us the whole business of the family and the crime situation. And so I'm just excited about where we go today. So go right ahead, brother.
Well, thank you so much. I miss you because, you know, you always give added information, certainly the level of this class, and we're glad. And please feel free to educate, illuminate, and inspire us on this beautiful broadcast, this beautiful morning. God bless you, Bishop Harris.
Yes, sir. I thank you for the privilege, and I'm honored to be invited back again the second time. The concern that we have concerning the church and the family is the most important thing as far as with humanity. First and foremost, many people think that man can change and alter family structures, but what they fail to realize that man is not the author of the family. God created the institution of the family. The family is the first foundation for all human institutions that include the government, it includes religion, educational systems, and our economic systems all begin with mother and father with the family. Also, we must understand that the dynamics of the family, that God is the potter and we are the clay. And as the potter of creation, that he have established all things in his time, his purpose. Everything was created for a purpose. There is functionality. All things have a role, and there's also divine authority given with that there. In the relationship between male and female, there's no such thing as superiority, but there's complementary roles that God created as a potter for men and women and their offspring to serve in. And so all of nature teaches this in animals and all kingdoms, that male and female work together in concert to fulfill their divine purpose for which they were created. We must also understand that man was created in the image of God, but in psychology, man is defined as a body and a soul. But God says, according to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, that God is a man, a soul, and a spirit. And since he's a spirit, that is the essence of man. Man is housed in a body. It's called a trichotomy, three elements, body, soul, and spirit. And that he's housed in a body, but he has his mind to interact with the natural world which exists in. For without the five senses, the five ducts, we would not even know that we exist, have no knowledge of perception, light, touch, sensitivity, smell, taste. We have no interaction with the known world. And so because of the senses God has put in us, the spirit is what goes back to God, because these natural things, when they would dissipate, man dies, the natural elements that we have today will now no longer exist. So talking about the family, number one, God created man and he created woman. He created man in his image, and woman came from man. In Genesis 2:23, it says, "Woe man." Adam gave her that name because Adam said that she is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, and she should be called woman because she came from man, out of man. And so all that a woman is and all that a man is, it all came from God. We also, I'm sorry, go ahead. We also understand that Eve was also named by her husband, Adam. In Genesis 3:20, it says Eve was named by that name because Adam called his wife Eve because she was the mother of all living. And so Adam named all the animals. He knew everything about them, their character, and he was the tender of the Garden of Eden, and he was the father, the apex of creation, bearing his father's image on this earth, for God was his father. However, Adam and Eve did not have children as far as establishing a family until they were first tested. God had to find out the nature of their heart. Will he love? Will they continue to love him? Will they obey him? And we found out that their disobedience brought death and sin to the whole world. And consequently, all those that were born of Adam and all those that was born of Eve thereafter, started with Cain and Abel and later Seth, will bear the image of the fallen nature because of the result of sin. We're told in the book of Romans chapter 8 that man, because of this carnal, sinful, earthly nature, which is devilish, that men who walk after the flesh, they cannot please God because the carnal mind is enmity against God in Romans 8, 5, 6, and 7, and that it is impossible to please God in the flesh. So those who don't know him and those who don't walk in him cannot walk in the precepts of God, and they will not be able to stand in their judgment because they will not walk in his holiness. And so what are the sins of the flesh that cause men to fall and not walk in the anointing of God? Well, in Galatians 5, we're told that the sins of the flesh are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulation, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envying, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such alike. Paul even goes on to say that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. In other words, they may be promised to the individual, but they will not be recipients of the blessings that God has for them, because they will forfeit them because of the behavior of their sin. So man now, according to being played with sin, will fall under the category of being subjected to the bondages of the devil. Whereby the devil, the body, soul, and the spirit will come to oppress and even to possess men as parasites, because demons do not have bodies that are terrestrial, but they have celestial bodies. And those celestial bodies can interact, oppress the human flesh, cause sickness and disease, and also mental illnesses, of which Jesus had his ministry was dealt with casting devils out of people who were oppressed. So Satan, because of sin allowed by Adam, would have the opportunity to oppress human beings, destroy their families, and even, yes, devour the children. I know, Bishop Josie, you may have a lot to say about that as well. I stopped there for a quick pause in case you want to say something, and I will continue on, sir.
Man, Doc, you're so right. I needed to grab a hold of that because you said so much here today, Doc, that I feel that we really need to talk about. And the thing is, there is what I may consider a serious and condemning but true perspective is that the church today is not teaching the word as it ought to. You said so much, and I just need to dash back to something you said about in the Psalm on last week, Psalm 58 may have been where we are today. And I want to add into that this whole business about the family. People don't look at it and we see the family as a type of panacea, but forget the fact that the first murder came out of the family.
Came out of the family. In fact, God, yeah, God as the inventor of the family, we will look at that, the consequences of sin and the effect upon it, and how that first the concept of the family was first spiritual. Why was it spiritual? Because God had in his mind the idea of a family, and then it became natural. He created man and woman, but then he created the household of faith to produce an eternal, back to the eternal again, an eternal family. God has a sequence of doing this in the element of progressive, repetitious revelation, by which he will start with an element and then he will perfect it. For example, the lamb. We're told in Revelation chapter 13:8 that the lamb was slain from the foundation of the world. It was not yet done in the natural, but God already had the precepts in his mind. Then he came and manifested himself in the flesh. And then he also gave up the ghost. But then we're told in the book of Revelation, it went back to the spiritual, because he said, I'm he that liveth and was dead, and am alive forevermore, amen. And have the keys of hell and of death. So now he takes it back to the spiritual. He does it all things also to the priesthood. Remember, the first priest that introduced in the Bible Well, Melchizedek in Genesis 14. Well, that Melchizedek was Jesus, whom he met along the way, Abraham, and gave a tenth to. Well, later, God would then go to the natural. He was set up, of course, the Levitical priesthood under Moses, but then we're told in Hebrews chapter 7 that Moses got blindsided. He did not know that God would have another priesthood after that order, and that priesthood will go back to the eternal, Jesus Christ, who were not from the tribe of Levi, but the tribe of Judah. So the sequence that God established the family is something he wanted to have through the history of mankind to create fellowship with entities that he created, man and his offspring, that would dwell with him for eternity. So the family was not just a spiritual concept from the beginning in the mind of God, became a natural element manifested on earth amongst men. And God is going to take us back to that element when he set up his millennial kingdom, where we shall reign with Christ forever and ever and ever. This is what they call typological or progressive repetitious revelation, how God starts with something and then he re-establishes it and leads to its perfection. You know, here's another typology about the family. God put Adam to sleep. And when he put him to sleep, he took from Adam his rib. And Adam would say, she's bone of my bone and she's flesh of my flesh. Well, guess what? God put himself to sleep. He allowed himself to be crucified. He died on Calvary. But out of that, on the day of Pentecost, he established his body, the church. And so Adam went to sleep and God formed his bride, and Jesus went to sleep and then Jesus formed his bride, the church. And so salvation has come to us, but we are his bride now. But many organizations and 45,000 different Christian organizations, look at the problems we have with the church, must understand that we are betrothed to Christ in the family relationship. Betrothed means we're engaged. That's an old Jewish terminology. We are engaged to Christ, but he that endure to the end, the same shall partake of the marriage. For the coming of the Lord, the rapture of the church, is the marriage of the Lamb, expressed explicitly in the book of Revelation, chapter 19, and also chapter 21, when John spoke about seeing the angel who told him, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. This is Revelation 19:7. And what did he see? He saw a city fourscore. And I won't go into details to explain what all that represents, but I will say this here, that city, yes, that city was revealed by the Apostle Paul, his bride, his wife, his family. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 7. Verse 10, really. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 10. It says, Abraham was looking for a city whose builder and maker is God. We are that city. You will find that in the book of Revelation, chapter 21. So God has established a family. He established a wife, all right? His wife is yet to be fully manifested because we are right now called the bride of Christ, not his wife. And so the church is temporary because Christ is preparing for the eternal. The kingdom is eternal, but the church is temporary. We have governments and apostles and prophets and teachers and pastors. But when he comes, we shall see him as he is, and we should be just like him. And we're just like him, then we will have partook of the marriage, and we will be like him and dwell with him, as Paul says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 18. Chapter 4, verse 18, it says, we should be forever with the Lord. So salvation has come, and it is coming to man that God wants to establish his family. Here we also understand that in the Garden of Eden, how did all this mess begin? How did disarray, dysfunction, and rebellion, how did it first take place? Well, it first took place because Satan, another factor, came into the midst. God wanted to test the heart of men and to try them. And it's interesting, in Genesis 3:9, the Lord asked, the Lord said unto Adam, where are you? He said, where art thou? And Adam was hiding. He said, I was afraid because I was naked. I hid myself. And the Lord said, who told you that you were naked? He said, I did eat of the tree, right? And the woman that you gave me, she did it. She gave it to me. Adam is blaming Eve, and Eve later blamed Adam, and they were all blame one another. But here's the breakup of the family. The breakup came by when God says, I'll put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall be bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. This is the first Bible prophecy concerning the family, Christ's redemption of mankind, and establishing his heavenly family. Through the seed of the woman, God will come and destroy the serpent seed. He will destroy sin, rebellion, and disobedience in the earth. God will later come himself, as is prophesied, to destroy the works of the devil, sin, and the flesh, and give us victory in those areas. But the woman is said because of what she had done, he will multiply her conceptions, and she will have pain and suffer in childbearing. And he said, here's the conflict between husband and wife. And sorrow, this is Genesis 3:16, thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be thy husband, he shall rule over thee. You see, God had humble submission when he created Adam and Eve. Everything was perfect. But because of sin, there'd be antagonism between the male and the female. The man wanted to dominate and rule over her. And the woman, through her subtlety, she would want to manipulate and control him. And this divisiveness have permeated the human species. It permeated even to this day. And so this conflict, Christ had to come to bring a resolve. What was the woman, Paul says in 1 Timothy 1, 13 and 15, that was first in the transgression. But Adam,
Well,
he was the one of authority. And as authority, God had to, that's when everything changed in heaven and in earth because of man's sin. Yes, sir, Bishop Josie?
All right, are you hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So, Doc, that's some amazing stuff still. And I want us to look a little bit more at this because as you started to speak to the spiritual, I am still wanting you to address the fact, is the church now leaving the spiritual? Because when we look at the situations in America today, you got 70 plus mass shootings. In the Bahamas, we've had numbers that are just crazy at the beginning of the year. And the people who don't know better are calling on governments to find the solutions to crime, where we're seeing that they don't have the answer. If they
Correct.
did, with all of the intelligence that you've got in all of the various organizations, all of the alphabet groupings that are responsibility for it, they don't have it. But it seems as if the spiritual side got to come from the churches, and we're not hearing from the church. Are we missing it?
Well, it seems like the old proverbs, water, water everywhere, but nothing to drink. Churches everywhere, but not having any influence. What is our problem? Our problem is that we ourselves, the church is the problem. The only be the solution is that you become the solution yourself. In other words, Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians chapter 10 that the only that we can bring correction to disobedience, that we must first be obedient ourselves. We must bring every thought, every imagination, every philosophy, every religious theological concept to the obedience of Christ. But we at the church have exalted our knowledge, our philosophical ideas, and our humanistic thought processes to think carnally minded, not understanding the root of the problem. The root of the problem is divine disorder. The angels understand divine order, and they operate as seraphims and cherubims and archangels and angels, etc. But men totally operate in disarray. Husband and wife conflict in the home only brings about rebellion and disrespect in the family. That rebellion on behalf of the wife and the husband want to be the head, but don't want to submit themselves to God himself is the beginning of it. That leads to further deterioration, and then also bring that into the church. The church dysfunctional because the families are dysfunctional. Single mothers, Many pastors take the low-hanging fruit. The churches are pretty much filled with women, and we're not going after the men, which were the foundation of divine order, to set things in order. Consequently, our children are not raised in proper respect as well. A woman, as I mentioned last week, cannot raise a man because she can only impute what she has. And the children, they're looking for that structure, looking for that order and divine authority. The girls, many times, get much involved from a sociological perspective, premarital sex, because there's no one protecting them. Courtship is out the window. Recreation dating is the status quo of culture today. And so now have all of these unwanted children, babies having babies, total disarray. You have also the pastors many times pimping people in the church because they're utilizing the low-hanging fruit rather than going after the men, instructing them so that they can pastor their own wives, be spiritual leaders of their own home, and pastor their own children. Not leave it to the church to do that, but every man go back to his divinely appointed role created by God from the beginning. It was not relegated only to the Jews, but also God of all creation. It was applicable for Jews and Gentiles. So as a result, because the church is dysfunctional, because the families are, you can only have, in a sense, an anemic church that cannot resist the wiles of the devil, because we ourselves are plagued with devils. And what happened, the sad commentary on all this year is that in the book of Isaiah, it speaks this mightily. It says, Isaiah 3:2, it says, the mighty men, the men of war, the judges, the prophets, the prudent, and the ancient, the men, the captain of 50, he says, I will give children to be your princes, and babes shall rule over them. He says, and the people shall be oppressed, everyone by another, and everyone by his neighbor. The child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, and base against the honorable. He goes on to further to say, and as for my people, in verse 12, children are the oppressors, and women shall rule over them. And why is this the case? Because men have abandoned the divine role, and all the problems in the world today is not because of women. They're the symptoms. The problem is that we, the men, have advocated the responsibility, rejected the divine role, not walking the fear and holiness of God, not loving their own children, but leaving somebody else to raise their children for them. This dysfunction in the family has predicated even over into the church. I know some of this by slavery, and some of this because of culture and other factors that have been contributing elements to this here. But at the end of the day, the buck has to stop somewhere. We must be responsible for our own sins, responsible for our own conduct and our own families. Only then can we bring resolve to the church.
Thank you so much. Boy, flown by so fast. So, man, look, like when we hear you, we need more of you. We just going to wrap up this. Again, Bishop Harris, you've been so informative and
Well, I thank you for that, but I realize that Satan's role as the prince of the power of the air, his role is to understand and to manipulate both kingdoms, cities, governments, and the most basic root, the family. By destroying that, he can devour our children. We're told that, I think the verse you were referring to a little while ago in Psalm 58:3 about children, the nature of man. We have a thing we call the age of accountability. We take the Jewish system of a man becomes a man at the age of 12, the bar mitzvah. But however, the Bible says that in Psalm 58:3, that the wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they are born and speak lies. A child is born to die. That's why we all die. The atheists cannot stop that process. Every man is appointed to die and then the judgment. Okay. And so what happens is that it takes about 21 years to see the full manifestation. We call it in biology, the genotypic and the phenotypic expression, both the looks, the physical features, the development, and also the character development of a person. Now, when humans look at, well, child is innocent, but believe me, they were born as devils, and over time it will be fully manifested. Unless their trajectory change and God change their heart, that is the element of the essence of man. He will go up to always be a rebel at heart. Hitler, before from a baby, he was probably cute. Mussolini, Franco, whoever, all the great madmen we call history were little babies. But time told everything. And it takes about 21 years for a human, especially a male, about 22 to become fully developed physiologically. But at the same time today, because of narcissism and the pursuit of pleasure, most men today, because they have not been raised by their fathers, do not understand discipline, right? The mothers really cannot stop them if they want to. At 14-year-old male, Jenny's mother can't do nothing with that child physically. They have no respect and no honor for God and fear of God. Then God have no other alternative but to judge him. The state has no other alternative but to suspend them from school or to incarcerate them, or if he's done a heinous crime, a capital punishment. The state will execute him. But
Doc, I think
God
we
will
got to
have
wrap there.
ultimately,
We
yeah,
got
God.
we got to call a wrap right here, Doc. But I think I don't know. We're not definitely finished with this, Dr. McPhee. We got to get back on this. I don't know. This is awesome, and I think we got to figure a way to complete this. Doc has given us so much more information from which we ought to launch, and so we're going to get back to that. And so this has been the Trumpet Sounds Network, coming to you all the way from the beautiful country of Nassau in the Bahamas, 700 islands, rocks, reefs, and keys. Beautiful sunshine. This is
Amen.
your island in the sun.
TSR Radio is the perfect place for the family. TSR Radio is the perfect place for the family.
table.
Better believe it.
So how do you want to continue?